Train your mind to stay calm in any situation. Have you ever been in a situation where your heart raced, your thoughts spiraled, and you felt completely out of control? The world throws challenges at us every day, stressful moments, conflicts, setbacks. In those moments, how do you respond? Do you panic? Do you lose your cool? Or do you stand strong, like a rock in the middle of a storm? Imagine facing life's chaos with a calm mind, unaffected by anger, fear, or frustration. Can you truly train your mind to stay calm in any situation, no matter how intense? There are many philosophies, many paths, but the Stoics have something deeply powerful to offer us. They understood that the external world is full of unpredictability, but our response to it, that we control. They didn't seek to escape pain or hardship. Instead, they sought to master their emotions. They learned how to find tranquility even in the most difficult of circumstances. You might think this kind of self-control is impossible, but the truth is, it's within your reach. We all have the ability to train our minds and develop the fortitude to remain calm when everything around us seems to fall apart. It's not about avoiding challenges. It's about becoming unshakable in the face of them. If you want to learn how to build this strength, how to be a calm force in any storm, then stay with us. We will dive into the wisdom of the Stoics, and by the end of this video, you'll see a new way of thinking, a new way of living, one where peace and control are in your hands. But before we go any further, there are so many views on this channel, but only 0.2% of people actually subscribe. If you want to unlock more life-changing wisdom, please take a second to hit that like button, leave a comment, share with others, and subscribe to Stoic Greetings. We're building a community of strong minds, and we want you to be a part of it. Now, let's explore what Stoicism can teach us about mastering our emotions and staying calm, no matter what life throws our way. The fire within, mastering the initial impulse. The first impulse, that moment when life triggers an emotional response. It's like a spark igniting the dry tinder of your mind, and suddenly, you feel overwhelmed by anger, frustration, or fear. That instant when something happens, and without thinking, you react. This is where the battle begins. How often have we found ourselves saying something we regret, acting out of frustration, or making a hasty decision in the heat of the moment? It's human nature to react, but it is the Stoic's task, the warrior's task, to stop and breathe before reacting. They recognize that the impulse to react is not a part of the event, but rather something internal. It's an automatic response conditioned by our habits, emotions, and thoughts. But here's the thing. That impulse doesn't define us unless we choose to let it. The Stoics teach us to separate the event from our reaction to it. Marcus Aurelius, the great Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The power to control your mind, to control how you respond to life's challenges, is the essence of Stoic practice. The moment you can hold back that knee-jerk reaction, you've already won half the battle. Now, let's think about how we can master that initial impulse. First, recognize that it's okay to feel things. The Stoics didn't try to suppress emotions or pretend they didn't exist. They understood that emotions are a natural part of being human. But what made them different is that they didn't let emotions control their actions. They didn't let anger push them into foolish decisions or fear drive them into inaction. They understood that the space between the event and the reaction is where true freedom lies. Imagine someone cuts you off in traffic. What's your first impulse? Anger? Frustration? Perhaps you curse or speed up to get back at them. This initial response is instinctive. It comes from within, and if we're not careful, it can dominate our actions. But what if you paused for a moment? What if you took a deep breath and chose not to react? What if, instead of getting angry, you remembered that this person's actions are beyond your control and that your response is the only thing you can govern? By choosing to remain calm, you not only regain control, but you also avoid adding unnecessary stress to your life. The Stoics urge us to practice what they call prohairesis, the ability to choose our reactions. This is the art of self-discipline. It's the ability to pause before we react, to step back and see the situation for what it truly is. In doing so, we create space to choose a more thoughtful response. Seneca, one of the greatest Stoic thinkers, said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Much of the stress we feel comes from our initial impulse, our perception of events. When we react without thought, we often blow things out of proportion. The Stoics teach us to challenge our first emotional reaction and question whether it is truly justified. Let's look at another example. Imagine a loved one makes a hurtful comment. Your first impulse might be to lash out, defend yourself, or even withdraw into silence. But take a moment. Is it worth letting that comment control your emotions? Can you step back, acknowledge the hurt, and then choose a more measured response? This is the core of Stoic training. It's not about avoiding pain or conflict, but about mastering your response to them. When we train ourselves to control our impulses, we cultivate inner peace, regardless of what is happening around us. But how do we develop this ability to control our impulses? It's not something that happens overnight. It takes practice, awareness, and commitment. One of the simplest ways to start is by becoming aware of the triggers that cause your emotional reactions. What situations make you angry? What causes you to feel anxious? When do you tend to react impulsively? The more you understand your emotional triggers, the better you can anticipate them and begin to take control. For example, if you know that certain people or situations tend to trigger your anger, you can prepare yourself mentally. Before entering a meeting, a conversation, or a situation where you know emotions might run high, take a few moments to reflect. Remind yourself that the event itself is not the cause of your emotional response. Your interpretation of the event is. By changing the way you view the situation, you change how you will react. The Stoics also teach us to practice negative visualization, a technique where we imagine the worst-case scenario. It might sound counterintuitive, but by imagining a situation in which everything goes wrong, we prepare ourselves mentally to handle it. Instead of being blindsided by negative emotions when something unexpected happens, we are ready to face it calmly. This practice doesn't mean we want bad things to happen. Rather, it means we learn to stay grounded when things inevitably don't go as planned. For example, before you attend a difficult meeting at work, imagine that the worst happens. You don't get the promotion, you're criticized, your ideas are rejected. How would you respond? Would you be overwhelmed by anger or disappointment? Or would you accept the situation, knowing that it doesn't define your worth? By mentally preparing for the worst, you prevent your emotions from spiraling out of control. You remain anchored in reality, and your impulse to react with fear or frustration becomes weaker. Another powerful tool in mastering your impulses is meditation. The Stoics believed in the power of daily reflection and meditation to train the mind. In fact, Marcus Aurelius began each day with a series of meditative thoughts to remind himself of his duties and his values. He would remind himself that he would encounter difficult people, challenging situations, and unpleasant events, but that his response to them was within his control. This practice set the tone for his day and helped him maintain a calm, Stoic mindset no matter what arose. Through regular meditation and reflection, we can train our minds to remain calm, even when life throws us off course. When we practice regularly, it becomes easier to pause in the face of an impulse and choose a measured response. Over time, we begin to rewire our automatic reactions, replacing them with more thoughtful and composed responses. But perhaps the most important aspect of mastering our initial impulse is understanding that we are not defined by our emotions. Emotions come and go. They are fleeting, like clouds passing through the sky. But we are not the clouds. We are the sky. Our true nature is not bound by temporary emotional states. We can choose to let our emotions pass without clinging to them, without allowing them to shape our actions. As we practice this skill of emotional self-control, we also need to remember the deeper Stoic insight, that we are not responsible for the actions of others. We cannot control how people behave, but we can control how we respond. The Stoics taught that by focusing on our own responses, we free ourselves from the burden of trying to control or change others. When we learn to master the initial impulse, we step into a state of freedom. We become less reactive, less vulnerable to the whims of external circumstances. The Stoic is not someone who never feels anger, sadness, or fear. Rather, the Stoic is someone who understands that these emotions are temporary and that they do not have to dictate our actions. This is the power of self-mastery. It's not about suppressing emotions or pretending they don't exist. It's about recognizing that, while emotions are natural, our responses to them are a matter of choice. When we train our minds to stay calm, to pause before reacting, we reclaim our power. We become the master of our mind, not its servant. And in doing so, we unlock the strength to face life's challenges with grace and resilience. The path to emotional mastery is not easy. It requires practice, self-awareness, and a commitment to growth. But with each moment of pause, with each deliberate choice to respond rather than react, we move closer to the Stoic ideal of tranquility. And when we achieve that inner calm, we discover a profound sense of peace that cannot be shaken by the storms of life. Indifference is power, letting go of what you can't control. In the face of life's chaos, there is one simple, yet profound truth that the Stoics understood. We cannot control everything. Life moves in unpredictable ways. Events unfold that we cannot foresee. People will act in ways we can't always predict. In fact, much of what happens to us is beyond our control. Yet, in this truth lies a deep, almost paradoxical power, the power of indifference. Indifference doesn't mean apathy or detachment from life. It means recognizing what we can control and what we cannot, and then choosing to focus on what is in our grasp while letting go of everything else. It is about living with purpose and discipline, understanding that we cannot waste energy on things outside our control, because to do so is to invite unnecessary suffering into our lives. Consider the words of Epictetus, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. What he means by this is simple. We must free ourselves from the constant desire for more, for better, for different, because this craving only leads to frustration when we inevitably fail to attain what we wish. So often, we spend our lives chasing things, things that, in the grand scheme of things, are beyond our control. We might want recognition at work, a certain outcome in a personal relationship, or even to control the actions and opinions of others. But these things are external. They are not ours to control, and by fixating on them, we give away our power. Our energy becomes wasted on trying to influence the uncontrollable, while the things we can control, our actions, our thoughts, and our responses, are neglected. Imagine a stormy sea. The waves crash violently against the shore, but the shore remains unmoved. It does not chase after the waves or try to control the storm. It simply stands firm, unaffected by the chaos around it. This is how the Stoics believed we should approach life. We must become like the shore, unmoved by the storms that rage around us. The more we understand this, the more we begin to feel a sense of inner calm. But how do we apply this idea in our daily lives? It starts with recognizing the difference between things we can control and things we cannot. Let's break it down. We can control our thoughts, our responses, and our actions. We can control how we choose to act in any given moment, regardless of external circumstances. Our reactions are within our control. The decisions we make today, the way we respond to challenges, the attitude we adopt, all of these are things we can influence. The Stoics believe that true freedom comes not from controlling the world around us, but from mastering ourselves. When we choose how to react, we choose the course of our lives. On the other hand, we cannot control the actions of others. We cannot control the weather, or the economy, or the natural disasters that may strike. We cannot control the past, nor can we predict the future with certainty. These are things beyond our reach, and if we focus on them too much, we will be forever frustrated. Marcus Aurelius, a Stoic emperor, reminded himself daily, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. This is the essence of Stoic thinking. The moment we stop trying to control the uncontrollable, we gain a kind of freedom that most people never experience. We free ourselves from the chains of external circumstances and learn to live in harmony with whatever life presents. Now, let's think about the emotional toll that comes with trying to control everything. When we allow ourselves to be swept up by forces outside our control, whether it's the behavior of others, the results of our efforts, or things beyond our influence, we subject ourselves to emotional upheaval. If we're constantly upset by what others do, or by what we cannot change, we will never find peace. But the Stoic philosopher knows that the only way to find peace is to stop fighting the world. We must stop expecting life to conform to our desires. When things don't go our way, when people disappoint us, when the outcomes we desire elude us, this is when our true power lies in letting go. Think about it. When you stop expecting the world to bend to your will, when you stop placing your happiness in the hands of external circumstances, you start to experience freedom. You begin to see that your peace of mind does not depend on whether things go the way you want. It depends on your ability to respond with wisdom, grace, and control, no matter what happens. Letting go of control doesn't mean giving up or resigning yourself to passivity. It means recognizing the limits of your power and directing your energy where it can truly make a difference. It means focusing on what you can change: yourself, your actions, your mindset. Everything else, let it go. In your daily life, start to practice this indifference. When you feel frustration rising because something is outside your control, remind yourself of the Stoic principle. It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. This means that when life doesn't go as planned, The true disturbance comes not from the event itself, but from how we choose to think about it. Change your thoughts, and you change your experience. Next time you're in a difficult situation, ask yourself, what can I control here? Focus only on that. Whether it's a tough situation at work, a conflict with a friend, or an unexpected challenge, remember that you can control how you respond. The situation might not change, but you will. Your inner state will remain calm, steady, and resilient. Indifference is power. It is not weakness. It is the power to remain unmoved by the winds of fate, the storms of life. It is the power to decide, moment by moment, that your peace will not be disrupted. No one and nothing outside of yourself can take away your peace unless you allow it. So, practice indifference. Let go of what you cannot control and focus your energy on the things you can, your actions, your thoughts, and your reactions. In doing so, you will uncover a strength that most people will never know. A strength born of true inner peace, unshaken by the world's chaos. This is the path of the Stoic. This is the way of those who have learned the secret to living a calm and powerful life. You are the master of your mind. And once you truly embrace this, nothing at all, can disturb your peace. Practicing poverty, the path to inner liberation. There's a powerful lesson in something as simple as living with less. It's a principle that echoes through the words of the Stoic philosophers, and one that many overlook in today's world, the practice of voluntary poverty. What does it mean to live with less? It's not about abandoning everything we hold dear, but about learning to detach ourselves from the unnecessary attachments that we have to material wealth, comfort, and luxury. We live in a world that constantly tells us we need more. More possessions, more money, more comfort. We are taught that happiness is found in acquiring things. But the truth is, this chase often leads to an endless cycle of desire, one that never brings us true peace. The more we have, the more we think we need. And with every new possession, our mind becomes more restless, more attached, more dependent on the external world for our happiness. The Stoics knew better. They understood that the pursuit of material wealth and comfort is not the path to happiness. In fact, it often becomes the very thing that drags us away from peace of mind. They saw wealth as something that can easily control us, if we let it. It becomes a cage, and the more we fill it, the more trapped we become. But what if we could let go of that cage? What if we could free ourselves from this constant craving for more? This is where the practice of voluntary poverty comes in. It's not about giving up everything, but about training ourselves to be content with less, to rely on less, to find freedom in simplicity. By choosing to live with less, we can see clearly what is truly important and what is simply excess. There is a great power in letting go. The Stoics weren't saying that we should live in poverty by force or by circumstance. Rather, they encouraged us to choose it, to deliberately reduce our reliance on external things, and to focus more on cultivating our internal strength. The less we depend on the world outside of us, the more we can find peace within. When we live without excessive attachment to material goods, we can become truly free. Look around you. How many things in your life do you believe are essential to your happiness? How much of your peace depends on things you own, places you go, or people around you? It's easy to get caught up in the belief that we need more in order to be happy. But ask yourself this: what if all of those things were taken away? Would you still be at peace? Would your happiness still stand? The Stoic way of life teaches us to look inward. Happiness is not something that can be bought. It's not something that comes from external things. It comes from within, from how we choose to respond to the world. When we let go of our attachments, we find that we are not dependent on anything outside ourselves. And that is freedom. One of the most famous Stoic figures, Epictetus, lived with very little. Born a slave, he had no wealth, no material possessions. Yet, he taught that true freedom lies in our ability to control our responses to the world, not in our ability to accumulate wealth or possessions. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants, he said. Epictetus knew that the less we need, the less we are controlled by the world. The more we can focus on what really matters, our character, our virtue, our ability to choose how we respond. Seneca, another Stoic philosopher, also echoed this sentiment. He wrote extensively on the power of simplicity and voluntary poverty. He believed that by choosing to live simply, we could train ourselves to be stronger and more resilient. We could detach ourselves from the pull of luxury and ease, and instead learn to find peace in the most basic of comforts. He argued that wealth itself is not the problem, it's our attachment to it. No man is free who is not master of himself, he said. And the first step toward mastering oneself is learning to live with less. But living with less doesn't just mean reducing your material possessions. It also means reducing your dependence on external approval, recognition, or validation. We often find ourselves chasing after praise or admiration from others. We seek validation in our achievements, our appearance, our status. But the Stoic mindset teaches us that this external validation is fleeting and unreliable. It doesn't matter how much the world praises you if you are not at peace with yourself. True freedom comes when you stop seeking approval and start living according to your own values. This is where the practice of voluntary poverty becomes truly powerful. It's not just about reducing physical possessions, but about reducing your reliance on external sources for your happiness and sense of self-worth. It's about learning to find peace in yourself, regardless of what the world says or does. Think about the things in your life that you think you need, whether it's a bigger house, a nicer car, a higher-paying job, or more followers on social media. What would happen if you stripped those away? Would you still be content? Would you still be at peace? The Stoics believe that we can find true contentment when we learn to live without these distractions. When we focus less on what we lack and more on what we have, especially the things that cannot be taken from us, like our character, our virtue, and our ability to think clearly. Living simply is not about deprivation. It's about freedom. When we no longer rely on external things to make us feel secure, we find that we are more adaptable, more resilient, and more able to handle whatever life throws our way. The world may change, but we remain steady. The storms of life may blow, but we stay grounded. We are no longer controlled by the ebb and flow of external circumstances. Instead, we become the masters of our own minds. This practice of voluntary poverty is one of the most radical ideas the Stoics offer. It asks us to let go of our attachment to the material world and to focus on building inner strength instead. It's a challenging practice, but one that can lead to profound peace. When we stop trying to find happiness in things, we discover that happiness has been within us all along. And in this freedom, we find the calm we seek. So, ask yourself, what would it look like if you practiced voluntary poverty in your own life? What if you could detach yourself from the need for more possessions, more recognition, more comfort? What if you could learn to live with less and find peace in simplicity? Would you be happier? Would you be calmer? The Stoics believe you would. And so do I. True freedom comes when we stop letting the world control us. It comes when we can stand strong, with nothing but our own strength and character to rely on. This is the path to inner peace. This is the path to mastering your mind. The question is, are you ready to take the first step? Turning pain into a weapon, emotional alchemy. Pain, both physical and emotional, is a part of life we cannot avoid. It is something we all experience, no matter how strong we are, no matter how much we try to avoid it. But what if I told you that pain doesn't have to be our enemy? What if pain could become our most powerful tool in the pursuit of peace, strength, and control over our emotions? In the Stoic tradition, pain is not something to be feared or avoided. It is something to be understood and transformed. The Stoics believe that pain, when approached with the right mindset, could become a weapon for personal growth. Rather than breaking us, it can shape us into stronger, more resilient individuals. But how can we turn something that seems so destructive into something that works for us? First, let us understand pain as the Stoics did. In the Stoic view, pain is not inherently bad. It is simply a reaction to something external, be it a physical injury, the loss of a loved one, or a failure in our plans. What makes pain destructive is not the sensation itself, but our emotional reaction to it. The way we feel about pain, the fear and resistance we often have towards it, that is what causes us to suffer. Take, for example, the words of Epictetus, one of the most influential Stoic philosophers. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. The Stoics taught that the external world will always be unpredictable and chaotic. Pain, loss, disappointment, they are all part of the human experience. But our true power lies in how we respond to these challenges. In times of pain, we often feel that it has control over us. We react instinctively, allowing our emotions to govern our thoughts and actions. Anger, frustration, sadness, these emotions can overwhelm us. But if we can learn to observe these emotions without immediately reacting to them, we begin to see that they are not the enemy. The enemy is our attachment to them. Imagine, for a moment, that you are going through a difficult experience. Perhaps you faced a personal loss, or perhaps someone has wronged you in some way. The natural response is often anger or sadness, and while these emotions are normal, they can easily spiral into something more destructive. But if we approach pain with a Stoic mindset, we see it differently. Pain becomes a teacher. It teaches us patience, resilience, and the importance of self-control. The first step in transforming pain is to accept that it exists and that it is a natural part of life. Once we stop resisting pain, we take away its power over us. This is not to say we should welcome suffering or actively seek out pain, but rather that we should stop running from it when it inevitably comes. Seneca, another great Stoic philosopher, said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." This is crucial. The freedom Seneca speaks of is not the freedom to avoid pain, but the freedom to control our reactions to pain. The Stoics understood that we cannot always control what happens to us, but we always have control over how we choose to react. Now, let's consider a powerful concept from Stoic philosophy. The obstacle is the way. This concept teaches us that challenges, including pain, are not barriers to our success, but stepping stones. They are opportunities in disguise. What if we could look at pain not as a setback, but as the very thing that can push us forward, forcing us to grow and develop? For example, Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, often wrote about how adversity can be the best opportunity for growth. In his personal journal, which we now call Meditations, he wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This means that the things that seem to block us, the pains and difficulties we face, are actually the very tools we need to become stronger, wiser, and more capable. Let's put this into practice. When you face pain, whether it is the pain of a personal struggle, the pain of disappointment, or even physical pain, take a moment to pause and reflect. Rather than allowing your mind to race with emotions, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I use this pain to grow? What is this experience trying to teach me? It might sound difficult at first, and it is. But this shift in perspective is what allows us to transcend pain. By acknowledging that pain is inevitable, but our response is not, we begin to reclaim our power. We no longer allow ourselves to be victims of our emotions. Instead, we become masters of our emotional responses. When we stop seeing pain as an enemy, we can begin to use it as a tool for personal transformation. Pain forces us to look deeper into ourselves, to confront our weaknesses and fears, and to rise above them. It is through suffering that we often discover our true strength. Furthermore, the Stoics taught us to practice premeditation. This is the practice of mentally preparing ourselves for potential pain, failure, and loss. By anticipating difficult moments before they occur, we can approach them with a sense of readiness and clarity, rather than being blindsided by them. For example, in daily life, take a moment to reflect on what challenges you might face. Imagine how you would respond to a difficult situation, whether it's an argument, a failure, or a physical injury. Visualizing these challenges ahead of time allows us to be less reactive when they actually happen. This practice doesn't make us cold or indifferent. Rather, it prepares us to stay calm and focused, to face pain with strength and resilience. But let us not forget, pain also brings wisdom. Each time we endure suffering and come through the other side, we gain a deeper understanding of ourselves. We learn what we are capable of. We learn what truly matters in life. Pain has a way of stripping away the superficial, leaving us with only what is essential. It's through this process that we can uncover a more resilient and centered version of ourselves. To be clear, Stoicism does not advocate for suppressing or ignoring our emotions. It teaches us to feel, but not to be consumed by what we feel. Emotions like anger and sadness are natural, but they become destructive when we allow them to control us. The Stoics didn't believe in escaping these feelings. They believed in controlling how we respond to them. They believed that emotional mastery is the key to living a good life. So, what does it mean to turn pain into a weapon? It means using pain as fuel for growth. It means facing difficulties with courage and understanding, rather than allowing them to break us. It means using each painful experience as a stepping stone to a stronger, wiser version of ourselves. Pain, when approached with the right mindset, is no longer something to be feared. It becomes a tool for personal transformation. It becomes a weapon in the battle for our own peace of mind. And it is through the consistent practice of emotional mastery that we can turn any obstacle, any pain, into a force for good in our lives. The Stoics, in their infinite wisdom, knew that pain is not something to avoid. It is something to embrace, understand, and ultimately transform. And when we do, we unlock the true power of the human spirit, the power to remain unshaken in the face of anything life throws our way. The next time you face pain, remember this: you are not its victim. You are its master. And through the alchemy of your mind, you can transform it into something that makes you stronger. So, let pain be your teacher, your ally, and your greatest weapon in the pursuit of peace and inner strength. The mirror of mortality, memento mori, and calm in crisis. Life is fragile. You, me, everyone, we are all bound by time. Every single moment is a gift, but it is also fleeting. When was the last time you truly thought about the fact that you and I will not be here forever? Have you ever stopped, in the middle of your busy life, and reflected on this simple truth? Memento mori, remember you will die. This might sound harsh, even unsettling, but there is a reason that the Stoics constantly reminded themselves of this reality. They understood something that most of us overlook in our daily rush. Our time is limited. Every hour that passes brings us one step closer to the end of our journey. And that is not something to fear. On the contrary, it's something to embrace. The fear of death, the fear of what we can't control, the fear of the unknown. These are the very emotions that often drive us to panic in moments of crisis. We feel helpless, lost, as if we are falling into an abyss. But when we truly internalize the idea of memento mori, we begin to shift our perspective. We understand that our lives are a series of moments, precious and unique, and it is not the number of years we live, but how we live them that matters most. The Stoics didn't want to die, just like you and I don't want to die. But they understood that the idea of death wasn't something to avoid or ignore. It was a fact of life, something inevitable, and it was in this acceptance that they found their peace. They trained themselves to think about death not as something that brings fear, but as something that brings clarity and perspective. You see, the fear of death makes us fearful of life itself. It makes us hesitate, regret, and waste time and anxiety over things that don't matter in the grand scheme of things. We stress over trivial matters, misunderstandings, or small setbacks, and in doing so, we lose sight of what really matters. But the Stoics believe that by meditating on our mortality, by remembering death often, we could live with greater wisdom, purpose, and serenity. Why does thinking about death bring us peace? First, it puts everything into perspective. When you reflect on the fact that one day your body will decay, your possessions will be left behind, and even your reputation will fade, you start to see that many of the things you worry about are meaningless. The arguments, the frustrations, the fears, they all lose their weight. What is worth your energy and attention becomes clear. Second, it makes us more grateful for the time we do have. When we are constantly aware that we won't live forever, we begin to value our days. Every moment becomes a treasure. We stop taking time for granted and start focusing on what truly matters. The love we share with others, the work we do that gives us purpose, the things we learn, the growth we experience. Think about it. If you knew that your time was running out, would you continue to stress over that insignificant comment someone made? Or would you instead pour your energy into things that bring you peace, joy, and fulfillment? Would you waste time on anger, fear, or regret? Or would you choose to live with calm and control, knowing that life is short and you cannot afford to let yourself be dragged into unnecessary chaos? The Stoics practiced something called premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. They would imagine the worst-case scenarios, not to dwell in negativity, but to prepare themselves for the unexpected. In doing so, they learned to accept what comes their way with grace and composure. They were ready for loss, disappointment, hardship, and yes, death itself. When you make peace with death, You stop fearing life's challenges. When you remember that life is short, you stop wasting time on things that don't matter. Memento Mori teaches you to live fully in the present, to focus on what is important, and to let go of what doesn't serve you. But how does this help you stay calm in moments of crisis? Let me ask you, what is the worst that can happen? What if things don't go your way? What if you fail? What if someone hurts you? What if the worst happens? By constantly reflecting on your own mortality, you begin to realize that nothing is permanent. Not your struggles, not your triumphs, not even the people you hold dear. This doesn't mean that you shouldn't care or invest in relationships and goals, but it means that you will not let the temporary nature of things cause you unnecessary pain. Here's the truth. A crisis, a moment of intense stress, can seem insurmountable when we don't put it in the right context. But when we remember that everything is temporary, when we understand that our time is short, we begin to act with urgency, clarity, and purpose. We stop dwelling on the past or fearing the future. We realize that the present moment is the only one we have control over, and that gives us the ability to act with calm, even when everything around us is crumbling. Take a moment to reflect on your own life. When was the last time you took a deep breath and thought about the fact that you are alive today, that you are still here? And that means you have another chance to act with wisdom and self-control. How much time do you spend in unnecessary worry or anxiety? How often do you allow the world's chaos to disturb your inner peace? Now, picture this. Imagine you are faced with a challenge, maybe a problem at work, a misunderstanding with a friend, or an unexpected crisis. The world around you is panicking, emotions are high, and the pressure is mounting. But you are standing there, calm, collected, and unshaken. Why? Because you've already accepted that you cannot control everything, and that includes the outcome of this moment. You have accepted that, just as you have life today, you will one day lose it. And that knowledge allows you to handle this moment with grace, clarity, and a level head. The Stoics were masters at this. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, often reminded himself that death comes for us all, and there is no escaping it. But instead of this thought causing him to despair, it caused him to live each day with purpose. He knew that his time was limited, so he focused only on what was truly important. He didn't waste his energy on trivialities or emotional outbursts. He didn't get lost in regret or fear. He acted with calm, reason, and virtue. So, how do you begin to live like this? Start by reflecting on your mortality. Don't run from the thought of death. Embrace it. Meditate on it daily. Let it remind you that your time is precious and that nothing, not even your struggles, will last forever. Use this thought to put your life into perspective. Let it remind you to let go of petty worries, to focus on what truly matters, and to respond to life's challenges with calm and control. Memento Mori doesn't lead to despair, it leads to liberation. The more you accept the truth of death, the less you will fear life's uncertainties. And the less you fear, the more control you will have over your mind. The silent discipline, why you must speak less and listen more. In our world, everyone seems to have something to say. Every day, there are endless words, opinions, and arguments. Social media is flooded with people shouting their thoughts. The noise is constant. It's easy to get caught up in the frenzy, to feel the urge to speak, to be heard, to share our every opinion. But in the pursuit of calm, there's a lesson the Stoics teach us that we often ignore. Speak less, listen more. Let's pause for a moment and think about it. How often do we find ourselves talking when we should be listening? How many times do we blurt out our thoughts, driven by a desire to be right or to make our voices heard, only to find that those words cause more harm than good? Words, once spoken, can never be taken back. The damage they cause might last much longer than the fleeting moment of satisfaction we get from expressing them. Marcus Aurelius, one of the great Stoic philosophers and a Roman emperor, understood this principle deeply. He often reflected on the importance of silence and careful speech. He once said, "Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth." With this in mind, we realize that much of what we feel compelled to say is nothing more than an expression of our own limited perspective. Speaking without wisdom often makes the noise louder, and it clouds our ability to think clearly. But how does this relate to staying calm? The act of speaking is often an emotional reaction, one rooted in frustration, anger, or insecurity. It's a reaction to feeling misunderstood or to the need to prove ourselves. In these moments, we react impulsively, allowing our emotions to dictate our words. The more we speak without thinking, the more we let our emotions take control. The Stoic practice of speaking less is a tool for emotional mastery, helping us stop, think, and respond with intention rather than reaction. When we speak less, we create space for deeper understanding. Think about it. How can we truly understand the world around us if we're constantly talking over it? Listening requires patience and humility. It requires us to acknowledge that we don't have all the answers and that others might have something valuable to share. In fact, some of the most profound wisdom can only be heard when we stop talking and start listening. The more we listen, the more we learn. And with learning comes growth. But let's not misunderstand. Stoicism does not demand complete silence. The Stoic ideal isn't to become a mute, detached from the world, but rather to find the balance between speaking and listening. It's about speaking when it matters and remaining silent when our words won't add value. It's about choosing silence in moments of anger, frustration, or confusion, and only speaking when we are clear, calm, and focused. There's a powerful story of the Stoic philosopher Epictetus, who was once asked about how one should respond to insults. His reply wasn't to defend oneself with words, but to remain silent. By doing so, we avoid escalating the situation, and we prevent the conflict from growing. Silence in the face of anger or aggression often disarms the situation. It keeps our emotions in check and allows us to reflect before acting. But how do we develop this practice of silence? It begins with awareness. We need to be aware of our impulses. When the urge to speak rises, we must pause. We should ask ourselves, is this necessary? Will my words help? Or will they cause harm? If the answer is unclear, or if we feel that our emotions are driving our words, then it's often best to remain silent and reflect. In this silence, we are also training our mind. It's through this deliberate control of speech that we begin to refine our thoughts and actions. When we speak less, we give ourselves the chance to understand our own emotions and thoughts before they are expressed. We can ask ourselves, what am I feeling right now? Why do I feel this way? Is it reasonable, or is it just an emotional reaction? Through this process, we build a stronger, more resilient mind. The act of listening is equally as important as speaking less. In many situations, we may find ourselves too eager to express our own views, but we fail to truly listen to others. Listening is an art, a practice that requires attention and respect. When we listen, we open ourselves to new ideas, to other perspectives, and to wisdom that we might otherwise miss. And it's through this listening that we also develop the virtue of patience, a key Stoic principle. Listening does not mean agreeing with everything that is said. It simply means giving others the space to express their thoughts without interruption. It means being present and showing respect for their point of view. In this way, we don't just remain calm ourselves, but we help to create an environment of calm and understanding around us. The greatest Stoic philosophers were also great listeners. Seneca, for example, often advised his students to practice listening carefully before responding. "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth," he said, "so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." This simple principle can dramatically change our interactions with the world. When we focus more on listening than speaking, we stop reacting impulsively. We give ourselves the space to think, to choose our words carefully, and to avoid unnecessary conflict. In our fast-paced world, filled with distractions and noise, this might seem like a difficult practice to embrace. But the benefits of speaking less and listening more are profound. When we speak less, we gain clarity. When we listen more, we gain wisdom. And through these 2 actions, we become stronger, more resilient individuals, able to handle any situation with calmness and poise. It's not just about external calm, it's about internal peace. The more we control our speech, the more we control our emotions. We stop being slaves to our impulses and start being the masters of our own minds. In this silence, we find the strength to face life's challenges with grace and composure. We stop reacting to the world and start responding to it. So, as you go about your day, remember this: speak less, listen more. In doing so, you're not only creating peace in your own mind, but you're contributing to a more peaceful, more thoughtful world. And in this world, where chaos is everywhere, being a calm and wise listener is one of the greatest gifts you can offer. The Stoic rituals, daily practices to fortify the mind. You do not become strong by accident. You do not become calm by luck. Discipline is not something that visits you in the night. It is built, brick by brick, quietly, in the cold hours of the morning, in the heavy moments when no one is watching. That is where the Stoic lives. The Stoics did not talk endlessly about ideas. They lived them, daily, strictly, repeatedly. That is the only way they trained their minds into weapons. That is the only way they faced cruelty, loss, injustice, death, and still stood calm, untouched. That is what we must learn if we want to become like them. So the question is not, what should I believe? The question is, what should I do every single day to train my mind into steel? Let's begin. Morning reflection. Prepare for the war before it starts. The day begins before the sun rises. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, 'Today I shall meet with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness.'" Why would he begin his day like this? Why such dark words at sunrise? Because this is the first ritual of a Stoic, to expect life to be hard. Not because we are negative, but because we are ready. If you prepare for difficulty, it cannot shake you. If you prepare for insults, you will not take them personally. If you prepare for delays, failure, betrayal, you will meet them not with shock, but with peace. This is the armor you wear each morning. You don't wish for a perfect day. You prepare for an imperfect one. So before the world wakes, sit in silence and tell yourself, "Today I will not be surprised by chaos. Today I will be stronger than my emotions. Today I will hold the line." Negative visualization. Rehearse the loss. Seneca called it premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evil. Every day, you imagine losing what you have: your job, your health, your loved ones, even your own life. Why? Because the Stoics believe that to think about loss is not to fear it, but to master it. When you imagine what could be taken from you, you begin to see the truth. Nothing is really yours. Everything is temporary. Every gift has an end. And when you accept that, truly, you stop clinging. You stop panicking. You stop wasting time. This practice is not morbid. It is clarifying. It sharpens your awareness. It brings gratitude. It makes you move through your day with open eyes and a calm heart. So, once a day, close your eyes. Picture the worst. Watch yourself lose it all. Then, open your eyes. Feel the weight of the moment. And now, live with strength. The view from above breaks the illusion of importance. Sometimes your problems feel massive. The traffic, the bills, the angry words, the mistakes. But a Stoic steps back, far back. They leave the room, then the city, then the planet. Imagine looking down on your life from the sky, then higher, into space. You see the earth as a pale blue dot. You, smaller than a grain of sand. Your problems? Invisible. Marcus Aurelius practiced this often. Consider how small a part of the boundless and infinite time is assigned to each one. How small the space he occupies. This isn't meant to make you feel worthless. It's meant to free you. When you see how tiny you are in the universe, you let go of your ego. You stop making everything about you. You start seeing what truly matters. Kindness, clarity, courage, peace. This is the practice. When emotions rise, zoom out. When pride swells, zoom out. When fear chokes you, zoom out. Perspective destroys panic. Journaling. Talk to your mind before it talks to you. The Stoics wrote constantly. They did not post. They did not brag. They wrote to themselves. Marcus Aurelius's Meditations was never meant to be read by others. It was his way of checking his thoughts, correcting his flaws, reminding himself what matters. Why does this matter? Because the mind is wild. It spins stories. It imagines insults. It creates fear. But when you write, you take control. You slow down. You examine your emotions. You ask questions like, why am I angry today? What did I fear this morning? What did I fail to control? What can I do better tomorrow? You become your own teacher, your own guard, your own calm voice in the storm. Make it a habit. 10 minutes. Every day. Paper and pen. No rules, no filters. Just honesty. Journaling is not about writing. It's about clarity. And clarity is calm. Voluntary discomfort. Trained before the real battle. We all seek comfort. Warmth. Pleasure. Safety. But comfort weakens the mind. And the Stoic is not interested in comfort. They are interested in control. Seneca used to sleep on the floor. He would eat the simplest food, wear rough clothing. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to train. Set aside a certain number of days, he wrote, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, saying to yourself the while, is this the condition that I feared? What happens when you do this? You realize your fears were illusions. Hunger doesn't kill you. Cold doesn't break you. Simplicity doesn't make you miserable. You become grateful. You become fearless. So once a week, challenge yourself. Take the cold shower. Skip the indulgence. Walk instead of drive. Sit with discomfort. You're not punishing yourself. You're preparing yourself. Because when real hardship comes, and it will, you will be ready. Silence and solitude. Step away from the noise. The world is loud. It screams for your attention. News. Opinions. notifications, nonsense. A Stoic steps away into silence, not because they are weak, but because silence is power. Epictetus warned against constant distraction. He believed that without stillness, the mind becomes a slave to noise, a slave to other people's opinions. So we must practice solitude, not isolation, not loneliness, just time alone, to breathe, to observe, to think clearly. Find a space, a moment, a corner of the day where you are unreachable. No phone, no noise, just your breath and your mind. Ask yourself, what truly matters? What am I becoming? What am I allowing into my soul? Silence is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of strength. Evening review, the daily autopsy. At the end of the day, the Stoic does not collapse. They reflect. What did I do today? Where did I fail? Where did I win? Where did I lose control? This is not about guilt. It's about growth. Epictetus said, "Let sleep not come upon thy weary eyes, until thou hast reckoned up each deed of the day." Look at your day like a surgeon. Be honest. No sugarcoating. Did I get angry? Why? Did I react emotionally? How can I improve? Did I live according to reason or impulse? This is where progress is made, not in big events, but in daily reflection. Write it down. Speak it aloud. Whisper it into the dark. Then sleep. Let the day go. Tomorrow is a new test. We become what we practice. These are the rituals. These are the disciplines. They are not for show. They are for survival. And eventually, for transformation. No one becomes calm by wishing. No one becomes wise by reading alone. We become what we do, again and again. And these rituals, they are your weapons. They build the fortress within, not overnight, not without effort, but day by day, until one day, when the world shakes, when people scream, when chaos reigns, you will be the one who does not move. You will be the one who remains calm. That is the power of a trained mind. That is the path of the Stoic.